Hello there. I want to take this time to invite you to join me for the next half hour for Minister in Warfare for the Lord. You know, for many of us, in about a month from now, we'll begin our annual spring cleaning, a ritual that includes cutting your grass, trimming your shrubs, and painting the exterior of your house and your garage. That, along with cleaning the windows, both inside and outside, as well as going from room to room, cleaning and polishing the floors. And eventually, you may finally get to that one task that you've been putting off for the last 2 years, which was to clean the attic. And as you climb the stairs leading to the attic, and as you look in and survey the job ahead of you, and you said to yourself, this is going to be quite a job. But yet, you steadfastly plunged ahead with your task. And as you begin your cleaning process, there were many articles in the attic that you were not even aware existed. And it was during this scavenger hunt on your part that you came upon an object which caught your eye. It took the shape of a lamp, and you mentally said to yourself, I don't ever remember having a lamp like this in my possession. Perhaps it's part of the material that was left by the previous owner. Let me look at it. And as you picked it up, you noticed that it was a bit dirty and dusty as the result of not being detected for a number of years. And so you reached down and you got a rag and you began to rub the lamp, and a shine began to break through. But something else also happened. There was a mist that seemed to come out from the end of it, and then right before your eyes, there appeared a figure of a person, and suddenly you became frightened because right before your eyes, that mystical outline of a person became more adamant in its appearance. And then you realized that standing before you was a genie who had been imprisoned in that lamp for many, many years. And he told you that you were his great emancipator and liberator, and your wiping of the lamp had been the key that had unlocked the door to his imprisonment. And he was eternally grateful to you, and you would be his master, and he would be at your beck and call, for your wish would be his command. And he stated to you that the conditions of his servitude to you would be that every year at this time, he would come and grant you one wish, and that wish would be granted unto you. Now, if this scenario were played out in your life, what would be the one wish that you would desire most of all? Would it be fame and fortune? You know, I'm sure that if we were to take a survey, close to 90% would name this as the most covetous desire. And what about yourself? Would money and fame be high in your list of things most desired by you? And as I said before, most people would say yes. But surprisingly, as I read the scriptures, I came across the story of a man who was blessed with great riches, wisdom, and knowledge, and also fame. And though he had it all, yet that in itself was not what he desired most of all. Now, what would the richest man in the world during his generation desire and treasure most of all, and would place it above riches and fame? Well, the answer to that is revealed to us by the man himself King Solomon in the 22nd chapter of Proverbs and the first verse. If you must choose, take a good name rather than great riches, for to be held in loving esteem is better than silver and gold. For ill-gotten riches carries with it great consequences that one must pay, as described in the 10th chapter of Proverbs and the 7th and 9th verses. We all have happy memories of the godly, but the name of a wicked person rots away. A good man has firm footing, but a crook will slip and fall. And that action on their part will further strengthen the resolve of the good people to continue to do what is pleasing in the eyes of God. For in the 21st chapter of Proverbs, in the 12th verse, it tells us, "The righteous one knows what is going on in the homes of the wicked. He will bring the wicked to disaster." But it must be remembered that fame and fortune of itself is not evil. It's only when you allow your love for it to supersede your love for God, then it becomes evil and displeasing in the eyes of God. A fact that King Solomon further emphasizes in the 2nd chapter of Ecclesiastes and the 24th through the 26th verse. So I decided there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that this pleasure is from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please him. But if a sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please him. Even this, however, is meaningless, like chasing the wind. But why would King Solomon have such a dark and pessimistic philosophy about life that he would call life itself meaningless? Well, perhaps it's revealed to us in the 1st chapter of Ecclesiastes and the 2nd through the 11th verse, as well as the 2nd chapter of Ecclesiastes and the 16th verse. Everything is meaningless, utterly meaningless. Why do people get for all of their hard work? Generations come and go, but nothing really changes. The sun rises and sets and hurries around to rise again. And history merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. And in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now. And perhaps to King Solomon, the futility of it all can be summed up in this statement. For the wise person and the fool both die, and in the days to come, both will be forgotten. Yes, whatever materialistic gains you may acquire in your lifetime, you can't take it with you when you die. Unfortunately, many people do not comprehend the wisdom of these divine truths. But whether they accept or reject the truth, they and they alone must bear the full consequences of their actions. For as it states in the title of my sermon, time marches on, and it waits for no one. And the validity of that statement was really driven home to me on a recent Saturday night as I was watching television. And I was surfing through the channels. I came upon something that caught my eye. It was that of a familiar face that I recognized. But for a moment, I was a little perplexed. For the man that I was watching had been dead for over 15 years. Yet as I watched him, he seemed to be live and in living color. And then it dawned on me that what I was watching was a vintage tape of an old Lawrence Welk show. Now, the show was hosted by a former cast member of the original show. And on this particular night, it was hosted by a former singer who told us about the different incidents that took place on the show. Little tidbits and stories about Lawrence Welk and other cast members, and about what they did after the show went off the air and where they were today. And for this particular Lawrence Welk show, it originally was broadcast in 1968, some 36 years ago. And I remember saying to myself, has it been that long ago? But yet, facts are facts. And when I saw the people in the audience and the performers themselves, I recognized the clothing and the hairstyles of that time period. And it was then that I began to reminisce a bit about some of the major events that transpired in the year 1968. Events which greatly influenced the course and the direction our nation followed in that year of change and turbulence. And many of those changes were not received with open arms. And the nation's chief overseer and caretaker, who had the unenviable responsibility and duty to set sail and navigate the nation's course safely through the turbulent waters, was President Lyndon Johnson. Not only were there domestic problems, but the president also had international problems, most notably the Vietnam War. A war in which, in 1968, had already claimed some 30,000 American servicemen who had died on Asian battlefields. A war which, at that time, had no end in sight, and which also had some 500,000 men and women of the U.S. Armed Services in Vietnam. As the fighting itself became more intense with every campaign, it resulted in more domestic protest against the war that was spearheaded by college students throughout the nation. The year 1968 was the year that two prominent Americans died as the result of assassinations. On April 4th, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed in Memphis, Tennessee. And 2 months and 1 day later, on the 5th of June, Senator Robert Kennedy, a leading contender for the Democratic presidential nomination and brother of the assassinated 35th President John Kennedy, was shot and killed at a Los Angeles hotel by the gunman Sirhan Sirhan. And 1968 was the year that the nation was to decide who would be the president of the United States. And on the 5th of November, Republican candidate Richard Nixon was elected president as he defeated Democratic candidate Hubert Humphrey and American independent candidate George Wallace. And as King Solomon has said many times, nothing is new under the sun. It has all been done before. Different cast members and a different time, but the script itself remains pretty much the same. Yes, 1968 was a year of change and uncertainty, which led many Americans to experience a high degree of anxiety and stress. And to help alleviate those feelings,